Up next is the first panel, Climate Smart Agriculture in Uganda. This session will be chaired by Mark Mutaahi, Managing Partner at Bid Capital Partners.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, my name is Mark Mutaahi, and I approve that image. Alex, unlike yourself, I think it actually does me more justice. So I do approve that. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your attendance thus far. My role is simple. I've been asked to moderate a panel on climate smart agriculture, and I think, following the last speaker, this conversation is very topical. I think a few speakers have spoken about, climate smart agriculture, climate financing. Alex did mention, some people think it's a fad, ESG, and all these things going on. There's an interesting intersection between government, private sector, financiers, technology, data, and my panel is going to have a wealth of knowledge on this, so I'll ask you to join me introducing them. I'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves in more detail, who they are and what they do. We shall have, just in terms of setting the stage, we'll have probably about 30 minutes or so of discussion, but more importantly, I want to open it up to the room, so we're not just talking at everybody. So if you have any questions, please hold them. I will ensure, I know we're getting close to lunch, but I'll ensure we have time for a Q&A session, because I think what's more important to understand what you'd want to learn from the group as opposed to what I have prepared. So again, join me in welcoming my panel. My first speaker is Ms. Sarah Basemera, the team lead at Raising Gabdho Foundation. Thank you, Sarah. You can take your seat. Ms. Anne-Marie Mwaka-Sabano, the Head of Business Development, ABI Finance. Mr. Brian Lwetute, CEO and Founder, AGRIYIELDS, Uganda Limited. Thank you, Brian. And last but not least, Dr. Kenneth Semogere, Department of Architecture, Makerere University. So, hello, there we are. Apologies, thank you. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for joining me. Where do we start? We have a very experienced panel here, but maybe we'll start with a round of introductions. I'll allow you a minute or so. Tell us who you are, what your organization does, and then we'll take it from there. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be invited to share today. My name is Sarah Basemera. I'm a team lead at Raising Gabdho Foundation. Gabdho is a Somali word that means girls, and it represents the diversity of everything that we go through and the different people that we target to serve. We are a national social enterprise that champions climate action to support people to become self-reliant. So we use a number of pathways in the community, but also we work not only in the last mile communities, but in the urban areas as well. We work with refugees, both in Kampala and those in the settlements. Our kind of support is diverse, that also roots from its foundation, why we are Raising Gabdho Foundation or Raising Girls. For this particular panel, we the women, the mothers, sometimes they say we push ourselves so much, but we are the first people that suffer the consequences of every conversation that is happening today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Anne-Marie?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Anne-Marie Mwaka. I head the business of ABI Finance. ABI Finance is an impact financing firm. We are wholesale lenders We started out as a guarantee company 14 years ago, started by the government of Uganda as a strategic partner to the Royal Danish government. Our focus is to catalyze access to finance to smallholder farmers and agribusinesses. So for the very many years, our focus has been largely on business as usual access to finance, but right now our focus is on sustainable finance. We are the forerunners of green finance in Uganda, using 3 instruments: lines of credit, guarantees, and building the capacity of the financial services sector to make sure that it's fit for purpose to actually lend to agriculture. So borrowing from what the professor spoke about green finance, the sector is largely not ready. So our mandate right now, our passion right now as ABI Finance is to make sure that the financial services sector is actually ready to receive this funding and to deploy it. Thank you.
An architect by profession. I'm Dr. Kenneth Makerere. I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Architecture, but what brings me here is totally different. 4 years ago, actually, 5 years ago, we began something very rare in our country, because after 20 years of teaching, I saw that the College of Engineering at Makerere, we're not moving as fast as we should. So we ventured into a very big career called industrial design. Everything you use in life, somebody designs it. And so we opened Sasa College of Industrial Design. And we are moving very, very well. I'm here particularly to address you on equipment. You cannot go large-scale agriculture. You can't know high-value goods, high-quality produce if you don't have equipment. So we are really, really pushing it very hard to try and see if we can design our farmers better tools by understanding that this is how they use the tool, this is what gets wrong, this is what we have done in a rudimentary way for many years. So as designers, we are here with my team of students who graduated this year, and we shall be showing off what we are already doing, and we think we can really improve agriculture on that front in a big way. I submit.
Thank you. Brian?
Thank you. For starters, my name is Brian Loetute. I'm from the engineering background as well, electrical engineering. But what has brought me here today is to talk about the field of agriculture and how we use technology to make sure we improve the agricultural productivity per unit area, but also to talk about what interventions we can do to make sure that our farmers become resilient and we contribute to the sustainable development goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. So friends, you can see we have a good mix between private sector, finance, academia, if you call us the development sector, maybe, civil society. I'd hoped we'd have somebody from government. They failed to make it. So, Professor, unfortunately, I might have to call on you. No, we want action. We want action. So maybe I'll start with Anne-Marie. You made a very profound statement. You've said the sector is not ready. Why? Because as we have heard from NPA, there's a lot of innovations that are in place. There's a lot of ideas. There's a lot of initiatives, but the sector is not ready. Why?
Maybe I'll start with the story of ABI Finance. Some internal information. So last year, we embarked on this journey. We set ourselves very ambitious targets, green finance. We wanted 70% of our portfolio to be to agriculture, to green finance. We go out, we have a huge launch. I think that is one of the things that popularized ABI Finance. Most of you know ABI Finance because of last year's massive engagement. We get to the financial institutions, no products, no policies, no understanding of green finance. It's the proverbial putting the cart before the horse. So, why aren't we ready? There are policies that need to be developed within the financial services sector. And in here, I'm talking about from tier 1s to tier 4s, but I'm also speaking to the fintechs that lend to agriculture. I'm speaking to the other service providers within the financial services sector. The understanding of green finance itself, the confusion between sustainability, green finance, impact investment, and the too much wording that is out there, that understanding. One thing that we learned, one of the feedback we got from the sector, is that people do not understand the different definitions that are there, but also the definitions of what is, for example, talk about mitigation, talk about adaptation, all these big words. For as long as people do not understand what that is, people shun what they do not understand. It is not just a Ugandan thing, but for as long as I do not understand it, I'll either abuse it or just decide to abandon it. So, what are we doing about it? Do I get into that right now? Yeah. So, what are we doing about it? Going back to the drawing board. We are supporting the financial services sector to make sure that it is actually fit for purpose. We are drawing up, we started with a taxonomy, such that there's a clear definition for what sustainability is under adaptation in agriculture. What exactly are we financing? What do we call adaptation? What are the examples of the different activities? Taxonomy is just fancy word for dictionary. What are the different activities under adaptation that can be financed by financial institution? Under mitigation, what are the different activities? Under biodiversity conservation, then across the entire value chain, beyond production, there's climate smart agriculture. In marketing, someone who has silos and someone who doesn't have silos, the difference can be seen here in Uganda. This season you have a bumper harvest and the price is 150 shillings. Next season, you go down. Typical, what do the economists call it? Cobweb theory. But someone who is climate smart is a person who will go and construct silos and make sure that when the prices are low, I can actually have a mitigant against that and store. When the prices are good, I can be able to sell. So all that is documented in the agribusiness taxonomy that that is going to be adopted also by the government of Uganda. Then the other issue beyond just the policies, the products. We are supporting product development. We are also supporting skilling of staff. Right from, the skilling is not just for the food soldiers, but the governance structures have to also understand what this is. If your food soldiers are very good at what they do, but the board does not understand climate smart financing and green financing, nothing is going to happen. If the sector does not have systems, it doesn't have the strategy, has nothing to speak about this, it is never going to be implemented. So those are some of the things that we are doing. But also the other major issue is the issue of reporting and greenwashing. We can stand here and tell ourselves how we are doing all these brilliant things in green financing, climate smart agriculture. For as long as they're not documented, for as long as you cannot put pen to paper and say that this is what has been done, this is the impact, at the end of the day, you'll still be lying. So while we talk about all these good things, we are supporting upgrading of systems within the financial services sector to be able to report on green financing. So those are some of the things that we are doing around that.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And I want to follow up with Sarah. She has spoken of greenwashing and impact and all those things. Now, the groups you work with, so I'm in the business of investment finance, and impact becomes a big thing, and beneficiaries, so the women, the youth, the marginalized groups. But the challenge we have is those beneficiaries, don't see the value of that data and that tracking that you're requesting. And so on your end, what's happening to either educate them and prepare them for the opportunity when it comes to both CSA, but also climate finance? So what's the work that's happening on your end with these communities and these groups to prepare them for what everyone in this room is calling the future?
Thank you so much. Just to confirm, the question is, what is the work that we are doing to prepare the people for the future? Thank you. So there is a lot of work that is done by various people. First of all, what we do is to learn from what is working from other people. So there are some people who are kind enough to share, to hold learning meetings, learning workshops, to share the evidence of what has worked. So we pick the lessons from those bits, and then we go ahead to disseminate them in the communities. We further break down these lessons into information that can easily be absorbed by different people. We translate the information to different languages to ensure that the people are able to understand it. Most of the times, the beautiful investments, for example, that will be done at NDP4 in research, may just stay in a big book for a common man to understand. So what we do is find resources and commit them to ensuring that we are able to break down this to the communities and people are able to appreciate and take it in. We also go ahead to work with some of the best practices. For example, there has been a mention of a plan to do soil profiling in the next NDP for the 5 years. So what we do is we hope that people understand that soil, for example, is a human being. That is how we term it. It grows, it ages, it dies. Just because you are going to tell me next year that the soil in Rwanda, the soil somewhere in Gulu, Arua, is profiled for such a crop, does not mean that by the end of NDP4, it will still be able to hold maybe such a crop, though it could still mean that. So we go ahead to work with the communities to help them understand the practices that they can adopt to be able to maintain some of such instruments that the government has sought to establish. And in these methods, like as basic as biochar that we have grown up knowing, if maybe you don't, if some of us, I believe everyone here could be understanding biochar, but if you don't, that is the product of pyrolysis or carbonization, if you'd like to take it that way, that is used to enhance the soil fertility, that is used to support, maintain the nutrients in the soil, among other things. So we picked, and actually what I picked when Professor Pamela was speaking is that soil profiling is an important component that is going to be happening in our next 5 years, and that is going to also be very key in our work as Raising Gabdho Foundation. Then we go ahead to keep in conversation with our friends that support us with funds in the financial institutions. What I've personally seen over the years is that the people that have received these instruments don't want to pass them on because they have their personal targets and interests. And what I'm asking Professor Pamela today, please give these banks a target. Ask them, how many people have you funded or are you committing to fund in these 5 years under, for example, climate smart agriculture? Because some of them will have the money, and in the corridors, they'll talk about the money. When you go to them, they'll sell to you the money that they want you to take, and you're not able to access the right finance. So there is a bit of that. We also, I know I was going a little bit off, but we'd also like to, in a bit of cooperatives, so we arrange people in groups and work with them, but we ensure it's unique groups. It's an individual per group. But what happens sometimes when the resources are available is that it could be 50 groups with the same people. So if you're saying one group is 30 people, and you're expecting 50 to be 50 times 30, no. It is 50 people being duplicated everywhere. It is resources going to one person. And this way we are not able to support the different individuals that we target. So we ask that if there is a chance to ensure that there is traceability of unique individuals in the various cooperatives and groups that are intended to be targeted in the coming 5 years, please prove and ensure that it's individual members so that we can have working systems, we can have duplication, and we can be able to support each other in the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I also pick up on that, Brian. Mine is really, my question to you is about innovation and technology. So for us, again, in the finance world, we find that investors are very excited about innovative things that people are doing. And there's always talk that sometimes they're not either contextually appropriate, they don't work. My good friend David last week was sharing their story about a sheller that actually creates more problems like aflatoxins as opposed to less. From your experience, what, in the context of the Uganda landscape, is the most appropriate technology, and why is it not being implemented?
Thank you. Before I answer your question, I would like to make a comment on technology, and that in whatever we are doing in the agribusiness space, you need technology to enable the various functions and the various value chains. My colleague has been talking about, actually the professor as well, is talking about the soil profiling. What does this mean, for example? And what would that mean to a rural farmer in Katakwi, for example? Now, soil profiling is basically about getting to know the status of the nutrients in the soil, both macro and micro, to understand whether a soil is acidic or alkaline, and then superimpose the right crops, because the essence of climate-smart agriculture will start by understanding the foods that our plants in the soil consume. Okay? So that should be the first point. Gladly, at AGRIYIELDS, this is actually one of the first interventions that we have developed using technology, that's Internet of Things. Now, these are basically devices that pick information on the macronutrient status, they pick information on the water availability. Now, these are essential ingredients in improving the productivity across all plants, whether it's coffee, whether it's maize, name it. Now, the other important thing in agribusiness as a gap that I've seen, and I think my colleague from ABI mentioned it, is the documentation. How do we make an audit trail from the yield at the farm to the export market? It is technology which is going to solve this problem. And there are interventions we can do in the short term by digitizing the entire value chain from the last mile, the supply chain, and the export market. What I can say is that at AGRIYIELDS, we've put this functionality into the platform and are able to solve some of these problems. My colleague has been talking about the issue of access to finance and trying to, working with, for example, the likes of ABI and the challenges of having 50 people multiplied over, 50 groups, Now, digitization solves this problem, by just profiling a farmer based on where they live, the land size, their phone number, the crop they are growing, we can be able to solve this problem, okay? So I am happy to share a few insights with my colleague on the side chat, but what I'm trying to say is that from a country perspective, digitization is the way to go because we can do track and trace, The other thing I want to also talk about, we are mainly an agricultural economy, So we get a lot of foreign investment and we do a lot of exports. There is a lot of issue around traceability. But what does traceability mean? Traceability means, for example, understanding the source, where the coffee came from, what fertilizers have been used, whether organic or synthetic, Georeferencing will solve this problem because if we want to stay in the export market to the EU, to the US, we have to comply to all these new guidelines. Now, all these can only be solved in a participatory approach where technology touches on the different points within the agricultural value chain. And by this, I mean the finance, the people in the last mile who organize the farmers into groups. By the way, using technology and in line with the NDP4 that the professor has been talking about, we can today generate what I call soil maps. I know that the last soil maps in Uganda were done around 1955 or something. So Internet of Things, or IoT as we call it, is able to solve some of these problems. Now, it does not work in isolation, I must add. We are in sort of what you call industrial revolution. So you work with equipment, you work with the cloud, you generate AI algorithms to make sure that you get proper insights for a farmer. The last thing I want to talk about in terms of resilience, again, my colleague talked about the fact that people just throw these words, but what does this mean? You know, if a farmer does not get the right seedling, it means they'll lose the money, yeah? If they don't get the right advice at in terms of at what temperature the seeds will germinate, if they don't get advice, proper advice on when it is going to rain or when there is going to be a drought, then there will be losses around there. So in addressing the resilience, we must make sure we put investment at a policy level for accurate weather forecasting. I know the government has done a project on the satellite, low Earth orbit satellite project, I think in 2022. It would be interesting. It would be interesting to get the results of that. But also, another area that NDP4 needs to focus on in the short term is for us to get a number of weather stations. The accuracy of our forecasts today is anywhere between 50 and 60%. That's not enough, yeah? So we need to improve the accuracy of forecasting through proper, getting hyper-local data. We can only collect this data if we have the right gadgets in the regions. At the moment, I know in Uganda we have about, I think about 70 weather stations. Now, this is not enough when you compare to, for example, Nigeria has a similar project where they are going to roll out over 5,000 weather stations because of the importance of climate and weather in the way we do business. In terms of actually making this as a bankable model, it's not only touching agriculture, it touches transport, it touches the utility sector. So it is really a no-brainer in the government trying to come up and help us, the innovators. We need the information to be able to do the proper algorithms that the farmers can access. So in that area, I think maybe the NDP4 can help us. Maybe lastly, you know, we talk about Uganda as having fertile soils, but we still have people who go hungry. So what does this mean? It really means that our productivity is low, or in other areas where it is not, maybe it is not the right, the plants grow, but they don't have the right nutrients, so you suffer from malnutrition and so on. Now, at AGRIYIELDS, what we have tried to develop, for example, is a model where we can be able to estimate with precision accuracy the yield coming from, say, a sub-county or a parish from season to season. Now, I know this information will be very important for example, the finance sector that is offering loans to farmers, or from a country level in terms of generating food balance sheets. So we are happy to use this platform to partner with some of the people here to make sure that we change also the mindset of the people, because it is very difficult to convince a farmer to change their approach to agriculture when they don't see multiplication of the yields. So as government, as policymakers, as the private sector, we need to work in a participatory approach to make sure that we touch on all these points. I thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So, Doctor, from Brian's submission, it sounds like we need very many things. Really, and my mind to you is from a design standpoint. How do you do two things? One, ensure that these innovations and equipment you're making are adaptable to different practices, different places, but also that they are prioritized. Because from what he's saying, it would help if we could do a bit of everything. So from the design and the school, how do you prioritize what you're going to work on, and how do you ensure that they work in different areas and in different with different farming practices?
I'm going to say something very, very important, and maybe we have never thought about it. Those of you who did mathematics at A level, they used to have these numbers where they say, integrate, and then they give you a number. Then they'll give you another number, say, integrate from first principles. Those two numbers were very different. Because when they say integrate from first principles, means you quote theory, okay? All the way until the answer, you're going to have to quote some theories, some studied and proved concepts. And this is what we resolve to do at the college. We may not churn out many numbers, but if we tackle a problem, we go back to the basics. If it is a whole, you're going to get us to understand how it's held, how it is swung, by how much effort, how much pieces do you push in to do an acre. So in that way, we will be able to design from first principles. And so the answer of appropriate technology, the answer of who uses it, will it work, along the way, it will be discovered this doesn't work and this works. We emphasize the issue called product development process. And I want to assure you that all our people, our forefathers were very brilliant. There are some things they used which couldn't give out a lot, but they were working. And so from now on, we need to say, what has changed? What are the demands at hand that we need to game up and do things differently? So my answer to appropriate technology, my answer to innovation is first principles. I hear some people when they say that we have graduated 6,000 people in vocational, and I'm like, damn, how do you do 6,000? Because for me to design just one piece can take me months. Because we shall do a prototype, we go and talk to the farmer. We come back to the studio. We go back and test it, like many times. So by the time we put it out, it is quite elaborate. It is clear it will do the purpose for which it's meant. Now, the group that is here, you need to confirm to me that almost 90% of what we use in agriculture comes from abroad. You mean we are too daft to do anything here? I think for me the answer is we have been sleeping on the job. And this is where we are saying that we as the designers just get to us with a problem. I wrote here something called pain points. In everything you use, you will tell us how comfortable you were in using that product. Now those are the things you're going to interrogate. If it is watering with a can, you know you have to hold it, and then you tilt it, and then the more you tilt, the more water, or the less you tilt, and then the hand is going to get issues. That is where we are starting. So in terms of appropriate technology, innovation, we may not run very fast, and we don't promise you some silver bullet that the school is going to design this and the other. But as long as there is a problem, we shall resolve it. One of our students, for example, in the last cohort, because the sector we are talking about here is only agriculture, but we did about 5 sectors: agriculture, education, construction, health. And one of our students, just for an example, in health, said, look here, if you have a patient in the hospital and is lying on a bed, and they say bring that patient to the theater, you know what happens? you're going to have to lift him up and then cause more pain. And so this student of ours, I think you will see the product, he has figured out a bed, a ward bed, which turns into a wheeler. So your 96-year-old father, if he's told bring him to the theater, we just unplug certain parts, we put him up, we lower him to theater. So this is again from first principles. So in agriculture, there are many things we're using. Now let me go to this bit which I was about to forget. The issue of things you get from abroad and they break down and they decay in our yards. Very heartbreaking. I know the government has bought how many tractors, but from where? For some reason, they'll bring some mechanics to follow it up for the first year, the second year, the third year. The moment it breaks down in Kabulasoke, Lafini, forgotten, thousands, millions gone. But I mean, we have people surely who can repair these things and even get the smaller parts. I'm not purporting that we shall be a Netherlands tomorrow or a UK farm, but the smaller parts, because we have gone back to first principles. So my submission is for any appropriate technology, appropriate innovation, you have no other way than to ask the basics. What was it meant to do? How is it doing it? For who it's going to be used?
I have a quick follow-on question to that. And thank you for that submission. So academia is always accused of being too slow to innovate, and industry is so far ahead of you. And people talk about Lambert and Abbott and those textbooks that we used in Form 5 are still being used. How much do you collaborate with the industry to ensure that your students, your curriculums, and those things are keeping up with how fast, I mean, we've been talking of AI, are keeping up with how fast things are moving, to the extent that the teaching is continuously relevant, but also allows you the time you're saying to put out this technology and take those first principle steps, which seem to take a bit of time?
Thank you for asking that question. Last time I was walking on the streets, for some reason, I met this young guy who I thought I'd put up the photograph, but I think I communicated late, who had unpacked the engine of a boda. You know, he had opened up that silver thing you see at the bottom that makes the boda move. He had unpacked it, so I stopped. And I asked him, Hamzei, Chitambula Chitia, what is happening here? The young man who's barely 24 was able to explain to me how the gears get in, what lever moves right and left when you start the boda. Now, what we are doing at the school, we are connecting very closely with people in the marketplace. People like those ones. I was talking to the UNBS, Madame Patricia, and was talking about people who are crushing maize, and they're having a problem with their mechanization and how they thrash it into posho. So we have made a linkage with them. And in that way, we may not cover everybody, but we go sector by sector, group by group, but we come closer to them. So that when we teach the principles of design, and they have a problem, and we try to solve it, they are our examiners. And this is what the struggle I had with National Council of Higher Education. Every time I talked about the design school, they were taking me back to UBTEB, to vocational. I said, damn, this is not vocational. This is a design school. We are designing things that are going to be new on the market. So the answer is, we are collaborating very closely with the outside world. So we will bring machinery, we'll unpack it, especially we're interested in buying old machinery. If you have some old machinery, we bring it at the campus and the students begin to interrogate. Secondly, we are connecting with the highly experienced mechanics. These guys may not have the theory behind, but they are better than a Bachelor of Mechanical Engineering graduate because they can fix it, isn't it? So even if we speak in Luganda or in Lusoga, we will try and get to where their pain points are. What is the real issue? Will it work? Now, the speed, I don't promise you we shall go very fast, but we are starting, and our role is real problems. Because if we do that, they are going to hear us. Anybody who thinks we are so slow, we'll get him there at a certain corner.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question for each one of you, but I've received the note in the context of time, and I did promise the audience chance to ask questions of their choice, so I will come back to that if time allows. So I can open it up to a few questions now. Maybe we'll take 3 at a time. We do have an online question. Maybe we'll take that one first so we don't forget. One of the online attendees has a question. If you have a question to a specific speaker, just let us know. Just introduce yourself, your question, and who it's directed to. Otherwise, if you'll allow me, I'll direct it based on what's most relevant. I don't know who has a microphone can facilitate taking of the question. So we'll take maybe 3 at a time. We'll start with the question online.
Good morning. I hope everyone can hear me. Mark, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'll start with a brief intro. My name is Juliana Kagwa. I'm the Group Marketing Director for Sales and also all things commercial for a company called Seedco. It's a company that deals in maize, cereal, wheat, and soya hybrids across about 17 countries in Africa. So our business is essentially hybridization, and that's what my question is based on. I'll allow you to direct it as you see fit as the facilitator. So yeah, without further ado, I just, having recently joined the agribusiness industry, I realized a couple of things, and one of them, which is quite alarming to me, is the slow rate of adoption of hybrids across Africa, not just Uganda. And yet, it feels like one of the solutions for us developing and growing towards a climate smart agribusiness environment is actually the adoption of hybrids, of which these seeds are essentially higher yielding, they're drought resistant, they're disease and pest resistant. They would allow us to multiply yield per acre, and in so doing reduce the rate of deforestation, allow for soil recovery across some countries which really have some really low soil performance indicators due to overutilization of the same resource over and over again. So it feels like hybrids are the solution, one of the solutions anyway, that would lead us to achieving some of the UN SDGs. However, our rate of adoption, as I've mentioned, continues to wane versus the rest of the world. So for any one of the panelists, really, what is your view around this issue? Why are we so slow to adopt, for example, these hybrids versus the open pollinated varieties that we continue to use? And what can we do to hasten this progress as we move towards a climate smart agricultural environment in Africa? Yeah, that's it.
Farmer level. Whenever a season is coming up, what farmers do, for example, maize. I have had my 1 acre of maize last season. I've got my 15 bags. I keep 1 for the next season, because that is what they have been doing year in, year out. So what we need to do is, number 1, specific case of the hybrid seeds, you have to have demonstrations down at region or parish level if you're going to scale. Number 2, because people down there in the rural areas will believe in seeing, okay? Then we have to invest in data. If there is no available traceable data that can be translated in a location-specific, time-specific, language-specific kind of advisory, then it's difficult for the adoption to scale at the rate at which they want. I thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? As we get the other questions ready.
Yes, something else to add to that. There's an issue of lack of trust in the Ugandan context. People have been burnt by counterfeits, such that even when the real thing comes up, at the back of people's minds, there's this whole thing of it doesn't work. So the issue of sensitization and actually blending theory with practical, having demonstration sites, and also pointing people to the right sources of these technologies. Let people know, in the marketing campaigns, let people know where exactly the right stuff is. Because if you just tell someone, go to, what's the place that's common for Nachivubo, Container Village, you will find the good stuff, but also the counterfeits are just too many. So while we are calling upon the government to work towards making sure that we fed out these counterfeits, as the seed companies, it is also very imperative that we point people to where the good stuff is. The issue of trust, that is a major, major issue in the Ugandan context.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a question, and then we'll take maybe two or three at a time, and then we can respond to those.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I wish I had spoken before the two answered, but allow me to touch on one aspect, because that's, we are not speaking about cost, and I think that's the critical one. Let's forget the issue of quality. Cost is the very first one. If you're looking at hybrid maize for a rural farmer, and it costs 12,000 shillings a kilogram, and you need 10 kilograms for an acre, then you are already beginning to send this person away and send them to traditional seed, like my brother there said. So cost is number one. But more importantly, the hybrids are genetically conditioned to use certain fertilizers. That is second aspect of cost. And I'll give you a practical example. Early this year, I was for a meeting organized by the Presidential CEO Forum in Gulu. And farmers mentioned having bought this counterfeit seed very expensively. And because they could not apply the fertilizers, they ended up with 2 bags an acre. Very, very, very difficult. And let's not forget the vast majority of our farmers in this country are the smallholder farmers. We don't pay attention to them when we are making policies. We look at the likes of Charles and my brother Lorica here, who are farming 50, 100, 200, 300 acres. We are not looking at these small guys that run an operation on 3, 4, 5 acres. So I think that is one of the issues I wanted to mention. The issue of genetically seed that has some genetic modification, conditioning towards use of fertilizers, and most times inorganic fertilizers. How do we deal with this in the context of the climate smart agriculture? That is one. And that's why increasingly, I can tell you, people are going back to regenerative farming now, going back to traditional seed. It may have the consequence, the issues of low yield, but you're sure that year in, year out, if I plant it in my garden without fertilizer, I will still have my 8, 10 bags instead of getting 2 bags out of a hybrid. So let's focus on that. 2, still related to smallholder farmers, appropriate technology. I'm happy my brothers there mentioned it. You rightly said government has bought so many tractors. Tractors need to operate on land that is reasonably open, few trees and all this. So there has been a significant, and in the context of northern Uganda, if you came, you'll see that our biomass loss has been so high, attributed to 2 things: commercial agriculture and charcoal burning. Because we've swept all the trees to open land for tractors to come in. But again, we still have the challenges of maintenance that you rightly mentioned. How do we bring in appropriate technology? How do we work with oxen traction, but make it a bit more efficient? How do we utilize walking tractors more efficiently in an environment like this that also has the benefit of strengthening resilience or climate resilience? I thought I should mention those 2. Of course, I could have talked about data. We collect a lot of data, but do we use it? That's the other problem. There's a lot of data we collect, but do we actually use it for policy? we are sitting on data. You know, so it becomes a problem for some of us who collect data. There's fatigue from the people you want to collect data, because every time you're coming to collect data, but that data does not translate into something significant. So while we talk about data, I think it's important for us to begin to get this data to work. Short of that, we are just playing games. Thank you.
Thank you. Good day to all of you. My name is Lorica Matthew. There's a couple of many things that we'll probably touch on, but I think I would come to what you call quality, price, productivity, market, and things that can change. We're talking about finance here, green finance, climate finance, whatever story it is. Where's the market? What's going to pay? What's going to bring back the money? Because ultimately, garbage in, garbage out, that's the computer formula. It's the same, but now you've transitioned to AI. So if you're transitioning to AI, but you're still doing garbage in, garbage out, it's not going to change much. I'll give you an example on the seed issue. The research that's been done in Uganda has produced a variety of maize called Longa 10. Now, Longa 10 is a standard crop, maize crop. Many farmers like it. It's got weight, it's got average resilience and everything, but nobody markets it for its major success, in that when it ripens, it flips, okay? Most other crops will stay upright. And then when they stay upright, you get moisture coming on top of the crop, the fungus landing on top of the crop, and then all that permeates down in, and you have higher levels of aflatoxin infestation in other varieties. So one of our major buyers is gradually pushing farmers to say, let's go for this local variety. Don't experiment much anymore, but we shall buy it. So there's an assured market that if you grow Longa 10, we shall buy it. Now, that is market stimulation. How it relates back to crop science and narrow and all that is a long story for another day. So if we look at what we're talking about, many times we talk about agribusiness in the factor of maize and grain and things like that. But let's look at an ecosystem of the whole value chain. Totally at Entebbe, there's probably 1,500 square meters or 2,000 square meters of cold storage. In Nairobi, you have approximately 60,000. Okay? They fly out fresh produce by the plane load. Behind that whole supply chain is industry from transportation, cold storage, agrochemicals, name it. There's so many businesses behind there that are all functioning to deliver the export value. Now, Kenya has been at this game for a long time with the flowers. The Ethiopians have caught up and passed it. The Rwandese have caught up and passed it. If we look into the tomato market in Nigeria, the net importer of tomato paste was Nigeria. Now they're a big producer because of a value chain that has been built around it. Now, all this is market-generated investment. There's a demand, there's a financer, there's an off-taker. And we may talk so much about uptake of so many solutions in financing, but we may not succeed. I know for recently, quietly, the investors in the Kidepo International Airport, one of them was the Crown Prince of the UAE, and he went down to see the source of Uganda's vegetables, picked up his samples, sent them to his laboratories in Dubai, They certified they're organophosphate-free or whatever, chemical-free, and he's organizing a free market for Ugandan fruit and veg to be tested at point of receiving, not at point of export. So that's going to be a game changer in that you can put your produce onto an aircraft, it gets to Dubai, and it will be tested there. It will not be a question of you having to deal with the red tape in Uganda. So when we are trying to look at what we can stimulate, the finance aspect, the money can always be pushed to your face. It comes as grants, it comes as loans, it comes in many forms, projects, but what's the uptake? That's the question that I would like to see somebody answer in this room.
Thank you. Before I let somebody comment on that, and maybe that will be a question for you, Anne-Marie, related to finance and how that plays into markets. We have another online question from Joshua. Then we'll take one more question in the room. So we'll take the online question first, and then we'll take another question in the room, and then I'll allow you to respond. And unfortunately, we'll have to probably bring our panel to a close in the interest of time. So online, Joshua, please, your question.
Okay, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, so
please go,
I'm Joshua Bagoma. I work with Forty Fresh Association Uganda Limited, which you can hear me? Okay, Joshua Bagoma, and I work with Forty Fresh Association Uganda Limited, which happens to be an exporters association of people dealing in fresh fruits and vegetables, the growers and exporters. So my comment is on the hybrid issue that the first panelist had raised. For us in fruits and vegetables, and basically in horticulture, we are saying the low adoption of hybrid use is associated with issues of sensitization gaps, but also with issues of mindset. And what we're saying, like for example, in the fruits and vegetables, it's very hard to go away with hybrids. One, and we have already sensitized our farmers and the growers and the producers that you cannot compare the yields from hybrids with our local ones, though in terms of quality may be better, the local ones, but if you want to get high yields, then you have to go more of hybrid. And this is where we come in with the talks of high value crops. And if I talk about high value crops, then you cannot separate it from hybrid. And this is where we have been able to champion as the association to encourage our fruits and vegetable growers to go hybrid. This, then they're able to maximize on their yields. I wanted to comment about that question of hybrid adoption levels. And we are seeing some increase in the number of adoption and levels when it comes to horticulture. Thank you.
David, for future iterations, you might want Ms. Kagwa here. This hybrid thing seems to have a lot of comments. Question in the back?
Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a very interesting morning. I want to thank all the presenters. I'm particularly challenged by, Doctor, I think you spoke about first principles. And I'm sitting here and thinking and listening. We're talking about resilience, smallholder farmers, climate change, sustainability, biodiversity, money. From first principles, we know that one aspect that touches all these things we are talking about is encouraging smallholder tree farmers, and indeed anyone else, to plant trees. Whether you're planting trees as a pure stand for commercial purposes, or whether you are doing it as a form of intercropping, but trees are central to this thing. Trees speak to the first principles if we are talking about resilience and impact of climate change and building sustainable livelihoods. So my challenge, the financiers, the people with the money, what products, what models do you actually have to provide smallholders with the motivation to plant some trees? What models are we talking about to promote For example, intercropping, because we know in Uganda land is a challenge. So when we are talking about smallholder farmers, it's very difficult for somebody to say, I will put aside 1 hectare and just plant trees. But it would be an interesting proposition if you told him or her or the household that this is the way you can integrate trees into all your other productivity. And the impact, even on food security, on fuel. People are cutting now fruit trees to cook. That gives you an idea of the severity that is being faced by people in the rural areas. People can no longer thatch homes because the grass is not available. Somebody in the ministry, I think the PS spoke about the importance of riparian zones and wetlands. So, but I don't see that when you come to panels like this, the people making the policies, the people providing the money, the resources, how do we come up with models that can incentivize, that can motivate smallholder farmers to plant trees? Because if we lose it there, we've lost the game. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think I'll take the final question. Somebody there.
Thank you very much. My name is Deborah. I work with National Planning Authority. My question is directed to Mr. Brian. How does our risk map look like in regards to the application of this advanced technology, in particular to soil mapping? For example, how do you address issues such as data governance, algorithm bias and fairness, ethical use, the regulatory framework, data privacy and security issues, such as information on land ownership? So as we apply this technology, how do we ensure that we balance the benefits that this technology presents vis-a-vis the risks that this technology also presents? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think we'll take the final question now, and we'll take it from you, after which we'll let the panel respond. So kindly, some questions have been addressed to you individually, so I'll let you prepare your answers, please.
Thank you for that opportunity. My name is Rachel Mwesigwana. I represent FINCA. And I'm very happy that you brought up the issue of what are financial institutions doing, especially for smallholder farmers. So my question is directly to Anne. You had mentioned something about providing assistance to financial institutions to come up with policies, particularly in the area of ESG as well. I wanted to know what you're doing for Tier 3 institutions to be part of this discussion, especially since we're doing a lot of work with smallholder farmers.
Thank you. So maybe I'll let Brian answer first, and it looks like there's a series of questions that are targeted towards you. I'll let him go.
Thank you. I'll start with answering the question on data privacy from the colleague from National Planning Authority. Now, there's been a lot of advancement in technology, both from the government angle, where licenses have been issued to telecom operators, there are cloud operators in the space. This data, once it's collected, it is staged somewhere in the internet cloud. Now, there are arguments around what kind of information is exchanged. Just to give you some bit of background is that when you're developing a platform, there is what they call a contract negotiation. In technology terms, that's an application programming interface. So basically, before you plug into mobile money, there are certain administrative and legal instruments that must be exchanged and an audit process. Number two, the data got, how do we protect it? There is a couple of areas, both at the user level, at the network level, and at the strategic level. At the user level, what we do is we limit these kind of subscriptions to have accounts based on certain security standards. So it is not possible, for example, for someone in the crowd here to come and access information that my colleague here has on 20 cooperatives if they don't have this access. That is at the user level. At the network level, like I said, there is all sorts of authentication and key protocols that we use. The tech guys here know about what they call public key cryptography. So what we do is we sort of secure the data as it is moving, say from the farm to the cloud. There are some encryption protocols and keys that are automatically generated by our AI algorithms so that the data at the point when you want to use it is decrypted at the point where you know it is in a safe space, and then it can be channeled to the different users. Then on the network or infrastructure side, there are already inbuilt protocols. For example, in the 4G space or the 2G space, they are what they call A53 protocols that, you know, encrypt information as it's moving from the device or from a phone or from a farmer's garden via the IoT device to the cloud. In terms of data governance, you know, the issue of soils is actually quite important, and I think every one of the speakers has mentioned it. This is where I think we need to sit maybe with the National Planning Authority and stakeholders to understand how we can share this data. Just to give you a brief, by first of all understanding the nutrient status of our soil, we can generate fertilizer budgets season to season, and this is the data that my colleague has been talking about at the back. So this is very important, especially also in the context of the oil sector, which is on the horizon. One of the derivatives of the oil sector is going to be fertilizer. We need to know how much fertilizer, for example, the country will need, say, country, district, parish, on a season to season. This is what is going to drive the agro-industrialization, yeah? And like I said in my initial submission, so it is a participatory approach. I know how it can work. So we need to see how we can leverage on this to fast-track this process. There is someone who talked about the market-led kind of, the two gentlemen at the back. The issue of market before productivity is actually very important. It's a very valid point. You know, in Uganda, we sit on very many, we have very good climate when you compare it to some other places, but we've not invested a lot in trying to find out which are those places where we can sell our products within Africa here, but also in Europe and the US and so on. Now, what we need to do is, again, you know, partnership effort. I know there are people from Trademark here. You know, these are people who can be able to unlock this area of finding out, you know, which markets do we have out there? How can we organize farmers, you know? How can we organize farmers to, you know, make sure that when there is a produce, there is a direct route to market, yeah? Not only there, the airlines, the trains, and so on. As in, government needs to really rethink the issue of infrastructure, especially the fact that in Uganda here, we are sort of landlocked. So we have to be smart in using our waterways, our air, and our land in trying to make sure that once there is produce, there has to be a destination. Now, what we are doing as innovators or in the big data space is trying to make sure that at every point, we avail the information that is required for decision making. And I think this is what is going to propel the agro-industrialization agenda. I thank you.
Thank you. Anne-Marie?
I'm responding, I think, to 4 questions. I'll start with Rachel, who asked about what is being done for the Tier 3 financial institutions in the development of policies. Actually, we are partnering with all tiers, from Tier 1 to Tier 4. Right now, we partnered with the Uganda Bankers Association, of which Tier 3s are part of, to develop the ESG framework that is being cascaded. The deadline, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is December this year. The central bank is going to start mandating financial institutions. They are mandating the financial institutions to actually report on ESG, and we are supporting that process as ABI. Not just for agribusiness, but we know that agricultural finance sits in the entire atmosphere of a financial institution. Then also what we are doing, that is one aspect. Then the other question was about the issue of throwing money at interventions that don't work. There's an afternoon session about value chain development. This Mkutano was very smart. Finance is we are speaking to finance right now, but after this panel, the next panel is going to be speaking to value chain development. Money alone cannot solve these issues. It is a blend. So stick around. There's much more that is coming up to speak to that issue, to address the issue of beyond money, what else is there? So I will not belabor that point. Then the other issue was about models that promote motivation and models that promote afforestation, especially when dealing with smallholder farmers. For this, I'll say that it is a journey. For us to even be seated here talking about climate smart finance, it is a huge step. I believe that we'll get to that point where there's an appetite to do long-term financing, because tree planting really is not a short-term thing. And a financial institution needs comfort that when a saver leaves money, saves their money, if they come back 2 days later, they can actually get their money. And it's not a case of I lent it to someone who invested in long term and they have a grace period of 6 years. So this is a journey that we are on, but I know some financial institutions that do not lend directly to afforestation, but incentivize it in a way that if you, let's say, take money for agriculture, for agribusiness, and you plant, they link you up with someone who can actually give you seedlings for trees at a subsidized rate. That way, the motivation is built slowly by slowly. So that is one way we are doing it. But the short of it is that this climate action and climate finance is really a joint dance. It's a partnership. So financial institutions will still have to partner with someone who is in afforestation, someone who, grant financing is very key when we are dealing with this long-term financing, because the appetite for long-term financing, the studies that have been conducted, one of them is by Aseli Africa, is that the appetite is not really very high. So this is a journey. We are making progress, and I believe that at some point we'll be able to have that long-term financing that we're looking for, being able to lend 15 years at a go. Then the other issue was the question about the cost issue. That was the first question. When we're talking about cost, we also need to factor in the aspect of the benefit. Let us not be inclined at only the cost. What is the cost-benefit analysis? If it doesn't work that way, if there's no benefit to it, then by all means, let's not try it. But while we are looking at the costs of, let's say, these improved technologies, what is the benefit that the farmer is going to get out of it? No one would be talking about these technologies if they actually didn't work. So there's a benefit to it. So what we are, for the vendors of these technologies, for the seed companies, the issue of investing in data, but also the issue of popularizing the cost-benefit analysis of it. That is also another aspect that we are passionate about at ABI. While we are selling these things to the financial institutions to tell them about climate finance, On a normal day, a financial institution will probably want to lend to a salary, give a salary loan. That is the easier thing. But what is the benefit of the financial institution investing in climate smart agriculture? We sell to them the PARs that are going to go down, and the fact that the farmer is going to make less losses. That means the quality of the portfolio and the ability to lend to agriculture becomes a lot easier. So what is the benefit that we are selling before? We also, while we are talking about the costs, the benefit is also very, very critical. Thank you.
Thank you, friends. If you allow me to end my panel here, as Anne mentioned, there is another session following on, and there's, I think, a roundtable in the afternoon where there'll be opportunity to follow on these discussions. Please. First? Yes.
You need a mic for the guys online?
I mean, there's quite a forestry presence here, and I think the point was made about its impact, not just as a primary value chain with its own path to commercial success, but how it influences intercropping and everything else. So I think Edward's going to speak to it on my panel. But last week, I think the EU, the FAO, and our government announced some intervention in the forestry space. Christina from the European Union is here. So I don't know if she can speak to it for a minute, or we can... Christina? Don't mean to put you on the spot, but it's been a burning question. Then we'll sacrifice lunch. Thank you.
Thank you for putting me on the spot. I'm not the person in charge of the forestry program, but nonetheless, the European Union has been involved in the forestry sector for a number of years now. So this is just a continuation of what we've been doing until now. It's a Team Europe initiative of 40 million euro. Which aims at combating the charcoal burning, basically. So there are interventions looking at that. We are also looking at the whole value chain of the forestry sector and trying to incentivize commercial forestry and also value addition. So not just producing the trees and cutting them and exporting them, but adding value here in the market. And this is actually one of the components of the entire program, which is much more complex, that I know better about because it focuses on access to finance for the companies that are involved in the forestry value chain for value addition. This part of the program will be implemented by our colleagues from the FAO. I invite you to keep an eye out there as to when the program will actually start being implemented and what the opportunities are in that space for SMEs. Happy to bring more details in the afternoon if that is needed. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll allow Sarah to add something specific to forestry.
Yeah, thank you. I would like also to mention that recently we also have a standard for smallholder farmers that are into forestry. So initially it was looking at the large plantations, and the people with 20, 30 trees were not actually being catered for. So there is an opportunity for the smallholder farmers today as well to tap into the carbon finance. And that means, for example, if there is a group of, let's say, 30 of us with 30 trees, and we have the evidence of, that is where now the data comes in, we have the evidence of the trees that are planted, we can sit here and project, and you can go to your phone and see these smallholder farmer trees in the different parts of the country. And we'll bring that evidence, for example, to the ESG framework and say, I don't want to mention which bank, and say, in exchange for your X emissions, we have these credits to sell to you. That could be a means of us accessing maybe finance, maybe low interest credit, or maybe actually loans from this bank. So there is an opportunity for us that has opened up even at the urban household levels. If we organize ourselves very well, we can tap into the opportunities and be able to thrive as foresters at a small scale. Thank you.
Thank you. So there we have it, folks. Sure.
Thank you. I'm so sorry to hijack the mic right now. The fact that you were speaking about financing and the whole discussion right now happening on how we can, leverage agribusiness, climate change financing to really propel the country forwards. It just came to my mind that we're here as government trying and have put over 1 trillion Uganda shillings under PDM in trying to boost agriculture at that lowest level. And I would really value your thinking and ideas and suggestions of what can we do to really get it right. What am I referring to? We have made this bold step as government to try and organize the lowest level of like the farmer, what we would call the peasant, round at the ground, on the ground. Government has tried to pump money there, and I heard you loud and clear that it's not just finances that will work. So going forwards, it's an opportunity. We may have gambled somewhere, but we need every brain to see how do we make it work. And in this conversation, I would really, even in the afternoon, where do we make corrections? What do we need to do to ensure that even this average Ugandan is taking into consideration all these aspects you're talking about? And, issues of being aware about climate change, and if it's even agroforestry, if it's about plant, how do we really, in this conversation, bring in the element of making the PDM work? And therefore, going forwards, I'm hoping that you will. And after this, I'm taking all your contacts. I want to extend an open invitation to all of you, because for me, where I see it, we plan all these ideas, what I said, it's all good on paper. But when it comes to action, if there's no financing, really, it's a dream. It's a dream. And therefore, you, with all your brains and amazing insights you've shared, I have learned. I was taking notes, and I do capture ideas very fast. I really want to have deeper conversations, deep engagements with all of you, and see how we can better really advise government and advise us on what we need to do to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Professor. Thank you for that invitation. If you, at the risk of sounding controversial, if we separate the real and the political economy, the answer is in front of us. Please invite us to that discussion. We'll give you ideas as private sector practitioners, and hopefully together we can find the solution. Unfortunately, friends, I have to end the conversation here. Thank you to my panel for sharing your wisdom, sharing your experience. To the attendees, thank you for attention. For those online, thank you for sticking with us. And to the Mkutano, thank you for inviting us. Cheers and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. I'll allow you to take your seats, and I'll pass it back to the curators. Thank you again.